Thank you to my members for making this video possible. You guys are the best. Mwah. Recently, I've been watching a lot of the Legend of Zelda content on YouTube, albeit speedrunning, video essays, things you didn't know about Link videos, and everything in between, and mostly even full-blown playthroughs that are hours and hours long. I've always known about Zelda growing up, and I've always been quite intrigued by it, but I've never been able to play it as I'm just not a console gamer. I don't own any consoles, and the only console I did own growing up was a Nintendo 64, but it was my mother's and she passed it down to me, and I only played Banjo-Kazooie on it, so I never got around to Zelda. And Nintendo games these days are just a bit out of my price range. However, as I've been watching these various videos about Zelda, I've noticed something about these dungeons in particular that Link goes through. I might be wrong, as again, I am experiencing Link's journey through Hyrule in the eyes of somebody else playing through the games, but I think I might be onto something here. What if I told you that buried beneath the crumbling ruins of Drang Lake lies a city that might be a homage to Zelda? A sanctum that doesn't just challenge you in combat, but also teaches the player that ability over skill can be just as important. Shulva, Sanctum City, from the Crown of the Sunken King DLC, is just that. And if you're a Legend of Zelda fan, you might already make the connection. From architectural design to switch-based puzzles to environmental storytelling, Shulva has all of the makings of a nice little tribute to Zelda's most iconic temples. Let's start with the biggest picture of all, the structure. Shulva does not follow the pattern of a linear dungeon crawler. It's a layered, interconnected vertical space. It has a central spire, which branches out into pathways, and secrets tucked into blind corners and multiple puzzle sections that must be completed to gain access to the final path to Sin. Think about the Forest Temple from Ocarina of Time. That temple forces you to manipulate blocks and defeat mini-bosses, and you have to collect keys to move forward. Shulva does the same, only, of course, instead of keys, you're using environmental stone pillars. Some of them are hidden to create new platforms, raise or lower structures, and some open up new paths. The Sunken City is more than just a vertical path. It's a spatial puzzle box, and it wants you to think, not just fight. The enemy placement within Shulva is done in a way that you can take out each enemy with range. In fact, the DLC actually tells you from the get-go that overall, you probably should have some kind of range within your kit. The verticality of Shulva should also tell you this fact. I mean, if you have the high ground, why resort to swords? The residents of Shulva have been undisturbed for so long, so why would they ever look up? If you're still not sure you should consider using a bow, this is something interesting to take into account. In most Souls games, if there's a path blocked, the answer is usually hidden behind some inconspicuous ladder or an obscure lever or just simply a hidden wall. But in Shulva, you have to shoot the switches, or the stone pillars, however you want to put it, to manipulate the environment. Some of these switches are on ground and you can easily swipe at them with your greatsword, but most of them are placed just outside of your melee range, so that's right, you have to shoot them from a distance with a bow. Anyway, sarcasm aside, where have we seen that type of level design before? In Zelda, switches are activated by arrows or boomerangs, and they're all over Hyrule. The eye switches in the Twilight Princess, the crystal triggers in the Skyward Sword. Even A Link to the Past had them. Again, just as a reminder, I was watching playthroughs on YouTube, so I might be getting some things wrong because I haven't actually experienced the game myself, but I'm just trying to make mental notes of what I see. Like I mentioned briefly earlier, in Shulva, many of the stone pillars are strategically placed to require precision. One switch raises a platform bridging to the Sanctum Knight ambush. Another brings up a pillar so you can access an alcove with loot. In fact, the entire opening section of the Sunken City DLC requires you to understand the relationship between puzzles and geometry, which is just like a Zelda dungeon in a way, where the first room of the dungeon teaches you the mechanic you'll be using throughout the entire thing. There's another Zelda hallmark, which is exploration. Zelda dungeons are designed like mini open worlds. You can go the wrong way, you can backtrack, find optional gear, and return stronger if you want to. Shulva seems to borrow this idea, and it pays tribute to this philosophy. You can descend into the Sanctum before solving all of the upper puzzles. You can face Ilana, the Squalid Queen, before unlocking any shortcuts. In a way, you can technically do the entire DLC without ever really embracing in it at all. But if you do that, you'll miss out on shortcuts and valuable loot and tidbits of NPC lore and most obviously much easier traversal. The shortcuts in particular are excellent in Shulva. They cut out huge chunks of the area, allowing for simple backtracking, which is understandable due to the up and down nature of the city. The layered design encourages you to embrace your curious side. Dead ends are pretty much almost always fake outs in Shulva. If you find a dead end, that most likely means there's a switch or a pillar tucked away in some shadowed corner, or maybe it's on the ceiling or on the floor. It rewards the same Zelda-style exploration impulse. This wall looks off. What if I throw a bomb at it? Or, if you're a Zelda speedrunner, this wall looks off. What if I spend the next 4 hours inching through it at 1 frame at a time? A Legend of Zelda temple isn't just a dungeon, they are also stories told through the stone of the walls around you. The Shadow Temple whispers of crimes and unquiet dead. The Arbiter's Ground speaks of forgotten judgments and execution. And Shulva tells of devotion to sin which turned into delusion. The sanctified soldiers are petrified mid-prayer. Sin is asleep, being sealed beneath the city. The pillars you shoot at don't just open doors, they are resurrecting the tomb. Every action you take breathes life back into a decaying religion. From what I can gather, this is straight out of the Zelda Dungeon narrative toolkit, where solving a puzzle often also unseals some of that ancient evil or awakens a slumbering force. On top of all this, what is a Zelda temple without a memorable boss? In Shulva, at the bottom of the city is Ilana, the Squalid Queen. She's a boss that uses summons and magic, and she has this ridiculously massive health pool which overwhelms the player. Ilana is not just a test of your reflexes, she's a test of your understanding of the entire space as a whole thing. If you haven't found the aforementioned shortcuts, you'll have a long trek back every time. Like, you literally have to scale the entirety of Shulva every time you die to get back to Ilana. In Zelda, Phantom Ganon in the Forest Temple also seems to have these multiple attacks that seem to challenge the player's spatial awareness, which I thought was quite similar to Ilana, as technically she's doing the same kind of thing. She's using all these attacks so that if you do die, you clearly weren't aware of the room that you're in. And obviously there's also Sin, the slumbering dragon, the climax boss of the DLC, the reason for Shulva for existing to start with. Like Goma, Morpha, or Koloktos, I might have said that wrong, forgive me if I did, Sin is tied to the DLC's history, its entire purpose, and he is the reason behind its architecture. It was a city resurrected for Sin, and he sunk it when they turned against him. Whether or not Tanimura intended Shulva to be a tribute to Zelda, it stands as one of the most puzzle-rich, exploration-heavy, and narratively cohesive locations within the franchise. The fact that it's one of the only instances where the use of a bow is heavily suggested is also unique to the DLC. Bows within Dark Souls are infamously bad. Shulva, Sanctum City, doesn't rely on Link's keys or Link's rupees, but it does rely on something even more important. Your curiosity, your intelligence, and your skill. Shulva is effectively Dark Souls' only dungeon that isn't in the form of a catacomb, but I suppose you could argue that the entire place is a catacomb, but that aside, it is a dark, damp, decaying, dragon-sleeping temple forged in unhinged Tanimura steel, but inspired, perhaps, by Hyrulean wonder. Let me know if any of you guys get Zelda vibes from Shulva. Again, I have been watching quite a few full-blown playthroughs of various Zelda games, so if I did get anything wrong, I blame it on the YouTube videos that I did watch. But I would love to hear your thoughts, especially if you have actually played Zelda, unlike me. But until next time, praise the sun, and maybe Zelda herself might appear.
Don't you dare let yourself go hollow, lest my time spent on you be wasted.